And we'll start with our territorial acknowledgement. And today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting.
Yeah, that was rude.
Okay.
Stressed me out.
So, Chief, I believe you wanted to provide us with some information.
Yeah.
Or not, sorry, you're just going to make a statement for us.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I just wanted to, before we started our meeting today, Mr. Chair, I thought it was important. I wanted us to take a moment and recognize that on Monday, March 14th this week, we marked the 9th anniversary of the line of duty death of Constable Jennifer Kovac. And I thought it was really important for us to remember Jennifer and honor her service and sacrifice for our community. So if we could just take a moment. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, let's move on. Item 3.0, are there any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? I'm not seeing any. We have closed
funding requests. One is for the Canadian Arab Women's Association for training, and it's $600. And the other one is for the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition, $3,000 for summer camp program.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
A seconder, Mr. Mayor, thank you. All in favor?
My computer's freezing.
That's carried.
Throughout our community. That said, our team is already extremely busy with both proactive and reactive investigations and supports.
It wouldn't be recording now.
Our team learns about human trafficking in our community in a variety of ways. Sometimes victims call police themselves to report their abuse. However, this is quite rare, as many victims have extreme fear of their trafficker or the misplaced belief that their trafficker loves and protects them. Many victims are marginalized, lack an understanding of the law surrounding the sale of sexual services, and have been instilled with the false notion that the police don't care or will punish them for associated crimes, such as drug offenses. More commonly, our team is connected to victims through our community partners, such as Victim Services, Women in Crisis, the Sexual Assault Support Center, and the Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence team at the Guelph General Hospital. These partnerships are invaluable as we have developed a mutually trusting relationship. This trust empowers these organizations to confidently refer clients to our team, knowing that our victims sense their clients' well-being. Our team also closely monitors daily police occurrences in an attempt to recognize situations that may not initially appear to be human trafficking, however, upon closer inspection contain warning signs. Further, frontline uniform officers will regularly notify us of calls they've attended where there are human trafficking concerns. In these situations, we conduct overt and covert investigations in order to locate the potential victim and ensure they are okay. This can be challenging due to the transient nature of human trafficking. When approaching potential victims, we are extremely cognizant of their safety and ensure the manner of our approach does not increase the risk of danger from their trafficker. Sometimes the suspected victims are hostile and want nothing to do with our team, which is a position we must respect. Other times they are eager to report their experiences, and we proceed with a criminal investigation and help them get to a safe place. Regardless, we try to educate them about the law and the services available to them. Many of these individuals are extremely vulnerable, and we provide advice concerning safety planning and how to avoid becoming victimized. The hope is to build a level of trust where these individuals will have confidence in the police and contact us when they need help. Further, we try to facilitate an introduction to our team's full-time human trafficking crisis intervention counselor. It is not uncommon for victims that we initially connected to our crisis intervention counselor to come forward months later, now ready to be involved in a criminal prosecution. Without the support provided, it is unlikely these victims would have come forward to the police. However, even when they do not come forward, our team measures success not by criminal charges or arrests, but rather by the number of victims we can help. At the end of my time with you today, I would like to just briefly discuss risk factors for human trafficking victimization and potential signs that may be indicative of a human trafficking situation. Individuals that are at a heightened risk for victimization may include some of the following factors. They may suffer from mental health and addiction issues, have a history of past sexual abuse and or domestic violence, be socially isolated and or lack family support, and be living in poverty or have unstable housing. It should be noted that indicators of human trafficking include elements of both psychological and physical control. Victims may appear fearful, anxious, depressed, submissive, tense, nervous, paranoid, or hostile. Frequently, they do not answer direct questions and allow someone else to speak for them. They may appear malnourished or show signs of untreated physical injuries or abuse. Often they will not have access to their own identity documents, cell phones, bank cards, or cash. They may be unable to provide a permanent address or lack knowledge of their current whereabouts, including what city they are in. They may have a lost sense of time and be unable to tell you the day of the week or even the month. Last, they may have brands or tattoos of names, nicknames, gang signs, and barcodes or other symbols on them depicting ownership. Further, there are certain locations that can be considered high-risk venues for human trafficking in our community. These locations include social media platforms, shelters, short-term rentals such as Airbnbs, hotels, massage parlors, modeling studios, escort services, and lastly, nightclubs and bars. To close, I'd like to thank you for your time today and for allowing me to briefly discuss this important issue. Jamie and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jamie and Daniel. Are there questions for either one? Mr. Mayor?
I don't have a question, Mr. Chair. I have a comment, though, if there are no questions, okay?
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. Through you. I just want to say thank you very much to both of you and everyone else involved, whether uniform or not, or you know, there's volunteers that even in this area as well, and it's pretty disgusting and unbelievable that this is an issue. But it is something that I constantly, at least through to the mayor's office, hear quite often about. People in the community are more aware, and I think you just updating us today, and there's been other updates to the board and other people, other agencies, other stakeholders in town. Just that awareness issue, I think, is really, really helpful, and so I just wanted to thank you very much for that, and to thank you for you know, I could only imagine that sort of the emotional toll it takes on some of these abuses that you have to deal with when you're investigating these matters. So I just, again, just on behalf of the community, thank you very much. It means a lot. Keep it up, and yeah, just thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter? Oh, you're muted, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the comments of the mayor on this one. Just one question I had was, is there any sort of idea of how prevalent the trafficking is in Guelph?
It's hard to provide an exact number. As with any sort of police statistic, we're looking at reported incidents, and it's believed to be a very underreported reported crime. What we have seen is that as we've been investigating human trafficking more since the start of this team, we're seeing almost double the amount of charges and incidents. So I think it's an issue that the more we look at it, the more we'll see.
I have a question, and it's about how I'm trying to word this in an appropriate way. How successful, or do you have an idea of the an estimate of the total cases versus the cases you actually can intervene and get positive results with? That was kind of a hacky way of putting it, but
yeah, it's a hard question to answer because you can look at success in a lot of different ways. For example, a lot of times we'll proactively go speak to potential victims and they have no interest in speaking to the police. But through our conversation with them, we can connect them with women in crisis or other community supports. A lot of times their issues are they're looking for drug treatment or some housing, and we can help them with those matters. And they're not necessarily something that we're going to have any follow-up with, but because of our intervention and us being able to help connect them to organizations in our community, we definitely view that as a success. So there's a lot of variation as to what would be considered a positive outcome. Our view is if we can do anything that's going to help these vulnerable people, it's got to be viewed as a win. A lot of times people aren't interested in talking to us, but even if our interaction with them can just be positive and respectful, maybe that can help them feel comfortable reaching out to the police when they are ready to come forward and get help.
Okay, great.
And if I can jump in to follow up with Dan, and Dan's right, and sometimes we won't have the numbers per se because the contact between the crisis intervention counselor and the victim, they create a partnership, or they create a connection there where they're dealing with them and not the police, and they're being supported and provided services, and we're not going to be aware of all those services that are being provided. And the other thing is, as Dan says, the contact here today may have somebody report in another jurisdiction tomorrow, and it's hard to track some of that information as well.
So I guess what I'm hearing is you're a link in the chain of continuity, and what you do can benefit further down the chain, if you will.
Absolutely. I think the victim-centric approach and working with our community partners is key. We can have the best success of arresting the actual traffickers by ensuring that the victims get the support that they need and can move on from the trauma they've experienced. This is a great example of police and the community working together to solve an issue in our community. And it's a new way of doing things in some ways. I've dealt with some victims who have reported sexual assaults in the past, and they're amazed how much more fluid and how much better the service is now as far as how we're able to help them by all working together as a team.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any. I'd like to thank you, Jamie and Daniel, for this information. I know it was very informative for me to understand the seriousness of this issue and the complications of having to deal with these issues from your own perspective, but in effect, the whole chain, I imagine, is somewhat complicated of dealing with the issues. So thanks again for spending some time with us and enlightening us on this, and good luck going forward with continuing your work in this regard. So thanks again.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Okay, folks, we ready to, were there any further questions? I'm assuming not. Okay, let's move on, and hold on. I'm having trouble with the electronics here today. Okay, do I have, next is a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting of February 17th, 2022. Do I have a motion there? Christine and Rod, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Next is our agenda, and part one is the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Christine, Rod, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. That's carried. We'll now move to the discussion part of the agenda. And this is the 2019 to 2023 strategic plan priority update. And Chief, are you going to speak to this?
I am. Just make sure you can hear me, Mr. Chair, before I start.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that Dan and Jamie's presentation was a perfectly illustrates kind of the importance of collaborative work with both our community and our service. And as we think about our strategic plan, it's important that as we work to ensure alignment with that plan, we're mindful of the holistic work being done in the development of our community's overall community safety and well-being plan. This collaborative work by the advisory group, the plan support team, and other community partners, including us and the board, informs the development of our initiatives and will certainly inform the development and our future strategic planning. So over the last few months, as I know the board is aware, the 6 priorities in our current strategic plan include community policing, organizational health and service effectiveness, community wellness, road safety, drugs and property crime, and our downtown. So I'm going to start with respect to community policing. As we've spoken about now for a couple of years, our community policing committee, which started 2 years ago, is now a permanent fixture within the service with the purpose of constantly evaluating how we can have a positive impact within our community. And this committee works closely with our youth and community service units and works hard to develop relationships with our community members and all the community organizations. We've continued to expand and evolve the deployment of our community resource officers. Right now, we have a community resource officer, Connor, who's our downtown officer, as well as Kyle Grant, who is supports some of our other neighborhoods. Our goal is to continually evolve and expand this program so we can have more CROs, community resource officers, available within our neighborhood groups, because they really are an important link between situations and initiatives and people we're trying to help and the support services available to help the people who need those wraparound services. In the last few months, the service has partnered with the John Howard Society and the Crown Attorney's Office to develop a pre-charge diversion program focusing on restorative justice and using community relationships, community organizations to address minor offenses rather than these being addressed in the criminal justice system in the first instance. So this often helps youth and adult offenders access the programs and supports that they ideally need. This program started in January of 2022. Also, in the last few months, we've continued to evolve our community engagement through our media, our full-time civilian media position, as everybody has gotten to know Scott quite well over the last year. A year ago was the first time we ever had a full-time person in this role with civilian media experience. Scott has brought both his media and policing experience as years as a dispatcher. So with his leadership and working with our community and members, the board has probably noticed things like our Behind the Badge series that we've been profiling our members. We are delivering media training for more of our members to always increase our ability to connect with our media partners in real time to better support and inform the community. And also, for example, our live streaming that we've done in the last, since last year, of live streaming and recording of these meetings for the community. Another important area of our community policing priority is to constantly evaluate and increase our engagement with the community. There's a lot of initiatives and events that we do throughout the year, including the Special Olympics Torch Run, the Kick Soccer Program, our Dairy Queen ice cream ticket campaign, Tim Hortons Camp Day, and our Cops and Kids Christmas campaign. Those are bigger events throughout the year, but it's important that individually that we track and grow our community connections and engagements. And since 2019, we've doubled those. So now we have a better system of tracking those. 2 years ago, in 2019, we recorded 107 events. Last year, even in the pandemic, that increased to 266. So that's more than a twofold increase in the last 2 years. In addition to that, again, part of our community policing priority is our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. That committee's really evolved a lot in the last several months, and they continue to work to develop new opportunities to engage and learn from our community members and community organizations. We've significantly increased our cultural appreciation and diversity awareness programs that's delivered to all of our new recruits. This is expanded now not only to be more hours that they get this training, but also they receive information from community leaders from our diverse community who deliver training and share their personal lived experience with our new members. We also have participated with both the City of Guelph and our local Ball for All program in an 8-week session last year at the West End Rec Center in relation to like basketball programs. Also now in the last few months, we have GPS member representation on the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. So this way, not only are we learning like within our service, but it's important that we're learning from other services within the province on best practices and things that we can bring to Guelph. And finally, we've also created just recently new policy so we can create internal support networks within our service for our employees. This includes an announcement on International Women's Day, March 8th, of our new Women in Leadership Support Network committee designed to support, mentor, empower those within our service who identify as women within the Guelph Police Service. So that's a number of community policing related initiatives. I guess before I close off that, I just thought I wanted to thank our leadership team. Had the pleasure of learning from Miss Sarah Sahid, who spoke with our team this week. She's our new Senior Advisor for Equity, Anti-Racism, and Indigenous Initiatives within the Strategy, Innovation, and Intergovernmental Services Office of the City of Guelph. So we were grateful for that, and we'll continue to engage the city and all local partners to kind of learn more about initiatives that are being developed both within our service and beyond. So that's a fine. So I'm done for that one priority area, Mr. Chair. I'll continue unless there's any questions before I move on. Okay. As far as organizational health and service effectiveness, since our last strategic plan update, Ms. Tracy Dupuy has continued to develop new programs and evolve some existing ones. We've increased our critical incident stress management support for our members. We've increased the wellness support for our new members, and moving forward, that's going to include our new civilian members, as well as our new sworn members. We were able to deliver important training to our communicators, our dispatch operators this year. We held a virtual conversation with our impact team for our members on Bell Let's Talk Day. And Tracy continues to develop many other initiatives, everything from sleeping for shift work to book clubs to promotion of EAP services for our members and their families as part of the wellness program. This will continue to be a very important area of focus because obviously in order for us to sustain our ability to serve our community, we need to be mindful of the health and resilience of our members. I'll stop there before I move on. No questions. Our service effectiveness. I know we talk about this at different meetings, and we'll probably touch on this in the next report here as well, but some highlights. Our response times for the third year in a row overall improved. Our priority one response times improved again in 2021 and were the lowest they've been in the last 5 years. So while that's only one measure, and there's pandemics and other variables, but it's a good trend. Obviously for 2 years in a row, and I look forward to seeing our crime severity index numbers this year for 2021. We've shown year-over-year improvements there. So those are two important metrics that we can truly measure how we're serving the community as we continue to grow at probably record pace with respect to community growth overall. As part of last year's, as part of this year's budget, the board approved the deployment of body cameras. By the end of this month, certainly by the end of April, all of that technology will be deployed within the service. So that's happened literally in the last 8 to 12 weeks. I look forward to those being deployed for our members and the community. And also that technology will bring with it new opportunities for on-site virtual reality training for both our members, perhaps some of our board members, if you're interested. And what that does is give members virtual reality opportunities to be immersed in realistic scenarios, which include de-escalation and empathetic approaches to dealing with incidents. So that's an important tool that we didn't have that now will be fully leveraged throughout the service. With respect to community wellness, sorry, Mr. Chair, I just making sure, no questions. With respect to community wellness, everyone I know is aware. We continue to work very hard towards the expansion of our impact team. The team has truly revolutionized, I think, not only how we support our community, how we work with our partners, but how we help train our members with respect to best supporting those experiencing crisis. We look forward to, we're hoping that we'll receive provincial support to make sure that's a 24/7 program. We've demonstrated that when we are accompanied by our impact, our CMHA trained mental health workers, not only can we provide better support to our community, we provide better support to our health partners, but we can greatly increase the hospital diversions. So rather than our members having to take folks to the emergency room because they have no other options, we can have better, less intrusive care delivered by trained health professionals. So we're really hoping that provincial support will come. And we also increased in the last few months our Health IM application was updated to not only enhance the support we provide to members in crisis, but the community health partners who ultimately support those who need medical care. And finally, our Downtown Liaison Officer program, working with our CROs, continue to strengthen relationships with our partner agencies, including our Community Health Center, the BIA Poverty Task Force, Stepping Stone, and our downtown businesses. So the community wellness will continue to work hard to play our part as a holistic approach to addressing and supporting the wellness of our community overall. With respect to road safety, a newly established staff sergeant position now oversees our traffic, tactical, and canine units to better support and align these units and optimize how we can support road safety initiatives within the city. Road safety remains a very important priority. I'm sure our mayor and Councillor Billings. They have lots of constituents who they want to feel safe and they want road safety to always be a priority. So we continue to evolve those teams and those initiatives. Throughout the last, since the last update, numerous ride programs were initiated. We've also increased, we're going to be changing, I guess evolving, improving technology so that when our community wants to report concerns or complaints with respect to driving complaints, driving issues, we're going to better utilize online reporting so that then those concerns and complaints can be collated and directed to our members so they're aware of where the concerns are throughout the city and they can be more proactive in those enforcement efforts. Ultimately, our traffic unit is an active unit with the Guelph Road Safety Coalition, which includes representation from the city, the Ministry of Transportation, the University of Guelph, Public Health, to constantly, again, look at holistic approaches to traffic safety. And I only have two more left, Mr. Chair. As far as property crime, we spoke at length last week about our beat team and the work that they're doing to support and better deal with property crime. I won't go into everything that we talked about last week, but just since our board meeting last month, our break, enter, and auto theft unit has had 10 arrests. They've executed 3 search warrants. They've been involved in relation to 3 stolen vehicle recoveries, 4 break and enters. They even had one situation where they recovered stolen police badges. They were from other jurisdictions, not from Guelph, but that's just since we spoke last month. So that's a number of things. And finally, with respect to our downtown priority, Connor continues to do a great job. I saw him in the snowstorm a couple of days ago on his bike. So he spends a lot of time to be visible and engaged, working collaboratively with the city, downtown businesses, Downtown Business Association, and other stakeholders. We have, with the feedback of the community, 2022, we'll see our Downtown Resource Officer program. The deployment of those officers will now be for 12-month periods instead of 6-month, and there'll be staggered deployments. So the downtown community doesn't see 4 new officers every 4 or 6 months, but rather there's a continuity. So new officers aren't coming in at the same time. Ultimately, we'll continually reassess our best practices for policing the unique downtown area of Guelph to best serve the businesses, the visitors, and the residents, to make sure that we're always mindful of our downtown. It's the heart of our community, and we'll continue to invest and involve our efforts in that regard. And that is that update, Mr. Chair. I welcome any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and through you. And please forgive me if I'm asking this question in the wrong spot of the agenda, so just tell me. But the calls for service that you were discussing in your update, in the report today, it has overview of the different zones that are labeled across the city. And I was just wondering, has there ever been, and I'm really sorry if this has been talked about before, so my apologies, it might have been talked about before, but is there a way where we could align the zones that you have with the wards of the city? Because that would certainly help with the councillors' calls and be able to kind of identify with the ward that they're in, and the boundaries are the same, and then it's kind of a good way of looking at it. But maybe it can't be that way, and it has to be this way, and I'm fine with that answer too. But I just wondered if you've ever thought of that.
So we have thought of that, and that is literally underway as we speak.
Oh.
So the zones that we have right now, I believe, have probably 20 years at least, have
Okay.
not changed. Daryl,
So it
I'm
needs an
close with the
update.
20. Want to give me a thumbs up, down, Daryl? 20s. So what we'd like to do, working with our members and the community, look at one, what is possible. Two, for those of us who lived in Guelph for the last 20 years, the city has evolved a great deal. So in order for us to continually improve, we got to look at how our zones are aligned. For example, the growth in the south end versus other areas, all that stuff. So that is literally underway. And I look forward to, in the coming months, exactly giving you kind of some details in relation to that.
Okay, and by all means, through you, Mr. Chair, just as a response, you know, you don't have to take what I'm saying as you have to do it or anything. That had to be aligned with the wards, but you know, it might help a little bit with at least an update, as you said, with it being 20 years old. Lots of changes in the city in 20 years. So I appreciate that. That was my only question. Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? No? Okay. Chief, are you going to go into in more detail, the calls for service annual trends, or did I hear you say that earlier on?
I certainly can. I can also answer any questions. I know that the council's, the board has read it. So I can go give a high level overview or can answer questions, depending on your preference.
No, I wasn't trying to push the another overview. Maybe it'd be best if we just went to the questions. Christine, you had your hand up?
I do. So through you, Mr. Chair, no one will be surprised by my questions. I'm going to go back to priority 9 calls. So you have around over, 26,000, which is about 36.6% of all our calls. So when you take a look at priority 9 calls, and it has, yes, administrative in nature, but it includes the 911 hangups, unintentional calls. In the report, the top of page 6 of 10 of the report, it said there was an increase of 1,278 unintentional mistake 911 calls, and then 1,237, and I'm not reading that correctly, Chief, like it's got, I think it says filed. Anyways, my first question is, what is that 1,237? I already know the 1,278. What is the 1,237? Is that an increase in something else, or what is that?
So as far as the unintentional, so I would have to come back unintentional 911 and the 1278 and 1237. I would have to get the specifics. So I don't want to give you the wrong answer. As far as the increase, I can explain the increase. The
increase in the report said it had something to do with changes made in the function of wireless devices. Is that part of it?
Yes. So if, say, for example, a phone company or a phone, I don't want to name a phone maker, but a phone maker changes their operating system that says if you press a certain button 4 times, it automatically calls 911. If that's a new feature and people do that, then, and that was the reason given in the executive summary, I believe, with respect to all those increases in calls. I believe there was a change like that. So people's technology changed, and until they get used to it, it can result in a lot more 911 calls. I see Judith nodding. Judith, am I capturing the essence of that?
Yes, that's correct, and it's really interesting because these things are set on the phones when the phone companies bring them out, Christine. They're automatically set on the phone, and you as a purchaser of one of these new phones has to actually sort of go in and take steps to shut the system down. So it can be as easy as the phone being in your purse, for example, and juggling around in your purse and happening to hit the side button 3 or 4 times, and that's going to generate a call. And so it's there what needs to be done. I mean, the companies are selling this as a safety feature. And what needs to actually be done is we need to sort of educate, and that's what we're intending on doing, is to educate people as to, you know, how these safety features can in fact cause false calls. And, you know, then that's when we get the increase in numbers like this.
Right. And so that was actually my next question, because last year when we talked about this, I brought up the whole educational component, and I didn't know how much we had done. So with respect to smartwatches, more and more people have smartwatches, correct? But if you've got it synced to your phone and you haven't turned off that auto call feature, then here you go again with 911, right?
Yes.
And if we're not getting this message out to lock your keypad or turn these functions off, because I'm looking at this increase yet again, and it's got it, of course, it has nothing to do with population growth. It's a technical issue. And so I was just wondering, like, you've got your ways to communicate and educate. We also have the city page. So I was wondering, on the city page, it's like, can you put it there too? Is like to get this message out, because yeah, because these numbers just keep going up exponentially. And so at the other thing I wanted to know, out of the 26,000 and some odd calls, what is the number altogether with unintentional hangups? My pizza's late. Like, what is the number of the 26,000? And maybe we don't know right now. Maybe we don't have that breakdown. But I know I was asking for that last year.
Well, and, oh, sorry, I'll.
No, go ahead, Gord.
So we'd have to get that. So if the compassionate to locate code, and I know we've talked about this before, it includes things like check well-being, next of kin notifications, 911 drop calls. So I'll have to pull out that number, but I'll get that for you.
Yeah, because priority 9, you do have that. It's all broken down, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so is it possible to work with the city on like our page that we have to get that education on there as well? At least, can we at least, you know, approach the city?
I know Scott is listening, so we can certainly work with the city and coordinate comms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Oh, Peter, go ahead. Oh. Peter, you're
Thank
muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to suggest that, would there be an appropriate way for us to write to the telecoms, rather than not necessarily all the manufacturers, but thank them for their concern for the safety of Canadians, but ask that they give some advance notice and possible feedback loop to police services or emergency services before they implement these things in the future? Would that be appropriate coming from our board or the Guelph Police Services, or should it go through some other higher level board?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd actually want to research that, and before I give an answer to that, because like I don't know, are there CRTC things, are there regulatory things? I would just, with your, I'd want to research that before I just gave an answer on that.
I imagine this would be a huge undertaking, and it would require the cooperation of many boards in order to put some weight behind the ask. Any other questions on this item? Comments? No? Okay. We're ready. I guess we're ready to move on here. Whoops. Okay. So, Chief, you gave the strat plan priority update. I see no further questions on calls for service. And the next item is Chief's monthly report. So did Do you have additional items to report on under that item?
Very briefly, and really, other than the updates provided, I wanted to thank again Jamie and Dan. And as we evolve towards what will become a new or a different normal with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic and public health regulations and all that stuff, I just wanted to kind of highlight for the board to thank our members. I know I used to give you numbers with respect to calls for service since the pandemic. As of a couple of days ago, we were over 145,000 calls for service that our members have gone to in the last 2 years since the pandemic was declared on March 12th. So I just think it's important to say thank you, not only to our members, but to the rest of the community. Who knows we don't know what the next few months will reveal, but as a community, both leaders, organizations, and residents, I think everybody's worked very hard. And on behalf of the service, I want to thank our members, thank the mayor, council, all of our other organizations for their leadership during what has been a very unique time. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ready to move on. Is there any new business that the board members would like to bring up? Not seeing any. Item 8 in the agenda, there are information items. You can read them at your leisure. In the next meeting, the OAPSB Spring Conference and the Canadian Association of Police Governance annual conference. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And Mr. Mayor, thank you. Seconded by Rod. All in favor? Thank you.